received 12-month bans, while Cameron Bancroft was banned for 9 months. Lehman says they've got to look at the way New Zealand play and respect the opposition.
It's a grave mistake by 3 young men, and we have to try and win the public back now and play the type of cricket that they expect us to play. We have to obviously look at how we go about that as a coach and support staff and playing group, and make the game better for everyone to play and enjoy watching us play.
Meanwhile, Australian great Shane Warne has described Smith's sentence as disgraceful, adding he's not a criminal. Todd Astle may be out of the second cricket test against England, but his replacement Ish Sodhi will be picking his brain as to how best to bowl to the tourists. Astle suffered a side strain while helping bowl New Zealand to victory in the first day-night test in Auckland earlier this week. Astle's injury has meant a recall for Sodhi, who last played a test 18 months ago.
Thankfully he's going to be, because he lives in Christchurch, he's going to come down and have a bit of a yarn, and you know, having another leg spinner around is quite good to bounce ideas off, because there's not too many of us around, so having him there will be quite good.
Ish Sodhi. The New Zealand boxer Joseph Parker has arrived in Cardiff for his world heavyweight title unification bout with British counterpart Anthony Joshua on Sunday. It's been another busy day for the 25-year-old New Zealander, with more media conferences, light training sessions and plenty of public appearances. Former Kiwi Ferns captain Luisa Avaiki has been named as the first Warriors women's coach, and the Hurricanes lock Michael Fatialofa will leave New Zealand rugby at the end of the Super Rugby season to play for the English club Worcester. Koina ngā pūrongo, hakinikina.
Last time on Checkpoint.
There are no more reductions in spending that can be made without a reduction in services. Instructions from central government became more and more specific. If you can't do it, then you need to move on.
Checkpoint, 5 o'clock weekday evenings on RNZ National, and also streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Freeview Channel 50 and Face TV, which is Sky Channel 83.
Now looking at the Met Service short forecast until midnight tonight. Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Cloudy periods and isolated showers. Occasional rain in Waikato and the Bay of Plenty from this evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine, however occasional rain developing this afternoon. Waitomo to Manawatu, including Taupo, Taihape and Taumaranui. Scattered rain clearing south of Taranaki this evening. Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, Wellington, Marlborough, Nelson, Buller, Westland, also Canterbury and Otago. Mostly fine, however a few showers in Canterbury and North Otago. Fiordland and Southland, fine apart from a few light showers, mainly about the coast. And Chatham Islands, cloudy with the odd shower. Looking at the main centre forecasts, Auckland, partly cloudy, chance of a heavy shower, most likely this afternoon, a high of 24. Tauranga, mostly cloudy, a few showers turning to rain this evening, and northwesterly breezes, 24. Hamilton, mostly cloudy, a few showers turning to rain this evening, also a high of 22 degrees. Wellington, mainly fine, but cloud developing late this evening, northerlies dying out and southerlies developing. High of 20 degrees for you. For Christchurch, fine, some morning cloud, southwesterlies developing this morning, dying out this evening, a high of 19. And Dunedin, fine spells, but the chance of a morning shower. And your high, 18 degrees. You're with RNZ National, it's 7:10.
And you're with Morning Report. A report from the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor has slammed the prison system, saying it's been driven by a tough-on-crime dogma rather than on data. It says the building of new prisons is not the answer to this problem and comes as the government is deciding whether to build a new 3,000-bed prison in rural Waikato. Here's our political reporter, Craig McCulloch.
A dismal assessment of the justice system and a clear message to the government.
New prisons are not the answer.
Dr Ian Lambie is the justice sector's science advisor. He's been working on the report for months after it was commissioned by the previous national government.
We need a whole rethink of the justice system, and where we put our efforts, I think that's what the report says.
New Zealand's prison population is one of the highest in the developed world at a time when crime is falling. The amount spent on prisons has doubled since 2005 and tripled since 1996 as people stay locked up for longer. The report blames that on successive governments which have adopted a tough-on-crime approach while ignoring the evidence. And the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, Sir Peter Gluckman, says that needs to change.
We only have to look at other countries we like to compare ourselves to see that there are alternate approaches to that which we are taking of locking an increasing number of people up.
The report lists Germany, Sweden, Norway and Finland as examples of countries which follow data over dogma. They spend more money on early prevention and rehabilitation. Finland diverts many offenders into community-based alternatives, and Germany treats young adults in a youth system right up to the age of 27. Dr. Lambie says those sorts of ideas are backed by strong scientific evidence. Building more prisons isn't.
When you build more prisons, the inmates are disconnected from society, their communities, and most importantly from their whānau and children. And that makes rehabilitation challenging and difficult.
It's a bold statement at a time the government is weighing up whether to go ahead with a new 3,000-bed super prison in Waikato. The Justice Minister, Andrew Little, says a decision on that will come in the next few weeks.
We do have a prison system that is under huge pressure right now, and we've got to address that. Then there is what we do with the prison system long term.
The government set a target of reducing the prison population by 30% over 15 years. Mr Little says he's soon to unveil some changes to the broader justice system to help get there.
Right from young offending, early interventions, and then what we do with people who do wind up in prison so that they're spending less time there. And ultimately, as with all of this, it's about keeping the community safe from criminal offending.
The opposition's not convinced by the government or by the report. National's Justice spokesperson Mark Mitchell rejects the idea his party's approach wasn't working.
We have to deal with reality, and the reality of it is we have good people that sometimes make mistakes, but sometimes we just have bad people, and then sometimes we have evil people. I don't want to see people released from prison and coming back into the community until we can be as sure as we can that actually they're safe to be back in the community.
Dr Lambie agrees some people do need to be locked away, but stresses it has to be the right people for the right amount of time. Atu iti whare parimata mō te hōtaka o te ata, ko Craig McCulloch.
It's 13 minutes past 7. The government is considering slapping travel bans on some Russians. It comes after the government was mocked for failing to follow traditional allies in expelling Russian spies. New Zealand is now the only member of the Five Eyes spying alliance not to have taken action against Russia over the nerve agent attack on former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in the UK. Our political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
Canada, Australia, the United States and countries in the European Union have all joined Britain and booted out dozens of Russian diplomats and spies. Britain blames Russia for the attack on its former spy. But here, the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern insists there are no Russian secret agents to expel. She says the government is weighing up travel bans and is not cozying up to Russia.
Not at all. The most appropriate action that I could take as Prime Minister is to get advice from our intelligence services on whether there was anyone that we should be expelling from New Zealand immediately. I did that. They advised me there wasn't. I've now asked MFAT to advise me on whether there are people who should be the subject of visa exclusions for New Zealand as well.
But the lack of action so far has drawn criticism from Nationals leader Simon Bridges.
Look, I think we have become a real no-mates on the issue of Russia over the last few weeks. We've been taking increasingly, or the government has been taking increasingly quirky positions that make us a real outlier, and we're being laughed at in international media.
The Foreign Minister Winston Peters was asked about the reaction to the government's claim that there were no Russian spies here to expel by National's Todd McClay.
Has he seen reports on the Radio New Zealand website today with the headline PM spy comments make New Zealand a laughingstock, or the UK's Guardian website which says New Zealand says it would expel Russian spies, but it just can't find any?
That's the thing. Having been in politics for some time, I prefer to listen to the NZSIS. I'd rather listen to people with experience than a few flighty journalists from abroad.
Mr Peters says most spying activity takes place offshore and that New Zealand doesn't face the same Russian intelligence presence as other Five Eyes nations.
You see my point? You've got a witch hunt going on here for an action without any evidence in the case of the SIS's advice to us. Now, there are Five Eyes partners who are aware of that, who perceive that that may well be the case, and they totally understand it. So why don't you, and why doesn't the government, the National Party understand that as well?
And Mr Peters rejects any suggestion that the government's response has been a joke.
The world has the highest regard for New Zealand and will have an even higher regard very shortly.
In 2014, the then Foreign Minister Murray McCulloch imposed travel bans on about 20 Russian and Ukrainians who were involved in the crisis in Crimea. From Parliament for Morning Report, Benedict Collins.
7:16. We did ask the Foreign Minister Winston Peters to come on Morning Report this morning to be interviewed about the subject, but he declined. With us now is National Spokesperson for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Todd McClay. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Guyon.
Two things I want to do this morning: get your assessment on where the government's at, and then ask you for your own perspective on this. So let's start with what you are saying about the government's position. What are you saying?
Well, the government has been very, very tardy for the last 3 weeks over their position on Russia, and quite honestly, I don't think it's clear to New Zealanders or to the world exactly what our foreign policy position is for Russia. It's a real fiasco, Guyon, and I think the challenge we have here is a foreign minister who is not necessarily giving the best advice to the Prime Minister, and a Prime Minister that seems reticent to take any real leadership on this. Every time something else happens, it's taking 4 or 5 days and a lot of media focus and attention before the government steps up.
This relationship was given new interest and focus because of the insistence of New Zealand First in that coalition agreement to re-begin the free trade agreements with Russia, which surprised people even at the time before the poisoning. So does that set the context up for this?
Well, I think it must do. So when the poisoning first happened, our Foreign Minister put out a statement criticising the use of these chemical agents, but he didn't criticise Russia as almost every other friend New Zealand would say it had or ally around the world did. During that week on Radio New Zealand and most news shows around the country, Winston Peters also continued to push for a free trade agreement. And it wasn't until the end of that week that it was tidied up by the Prime Minister with what was a very strong and critical statement, but didn't have any quotes from Mr. Peters in it until it was put on the government website, and then it was changed. So the question is, and it's a question for Mr. Peters, what is his interest in Russia? Because he, as Foreign Minister of a Western country, seems to be much more preoccupied with them than others are for the wrong reasons.
So what do you want the government to do? Do you want them to expel someone?
Well, what I want them to do is take this very seriously, be very, very careful about their comments, because this is not a laughing matter. It's a very serious issue. They need to do something quickly so that the rest of the world doesn't laugh at us, because I've got to say those headlines all over the world are not good for New Zealand's reputation, and the Foreign Minister needs to give proper advice to the Prime Minister. I just find it absolutely difficult to accept that there are no intelligence agents from Russia in New Zealand, because we're a Five Eyes nation, and every other Five Eyes nation, in fact, more than 26 countries in the world have expelled people because they fit the criteria.
Okay.
The government hasn't even told us what they think that criteria is.
Right, let's come to you then. You've just said yourself that you're saying that there are Russian spies in New Zealand?
Well, I'm saying I find it very difficult to believe that there wouldn't be when we have exports from around the world.
And they would have been there for years, right?
I don't know.
Well, if they're here now, then they would have been here for many years.
Well,
would that be fair?
Well, I guess. Well, no. Again, I don't know about that because I'm not party to any briefings, and the government does have the ability to look at all of these things. But I guess to answer that question, you've only got to look at a former Russian spy that was in New Zealand some time ago who has said that.
So we've got agreement. We've got agreement, haven't we, between you and I, that they've been here for years?
Could well have been. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Why were you happy to have them there as government?
Well, it's not so much that we were happy to have them here at the time, but certainly if we look at what's happening now around the world and the action that Russia has taken, New Zealand needs to work out its foreign policy position on this.
And this is why I'm going down this track, because I think it's an important distinction. We agree that there would have been people gathering intelligence for Russia for many years, and you never booted any out. That's true. That's a statement of fact. So what are you calling for here? Is it just a symbolic reaction, just find someone with a Russian-sounding name and boot them out of the country to show that we are in the club? Or are you really saying that it's a problem to have them spying so that they should leave? Which is it?
So what I'm saying, Guyon, is that actually the government's position on Russia has been very unclear for the last 3 weeks.
I know, we've had that, and I said it out at the start of the interview, and I gave you your shot. Didn't I? Yeah. I gave you a shot at smashing the government over it. Now the torch is on you, and I'm asking you why the national government was happy to have Russian spies here, and now it thinks we should boot someone out.
Well, no, I'm not saying at all that we were happy to have him there, but if we look at what's happened over the last few weeks, particularly in the United Kingdom, we now need to take a principled position over what should happen in our relationship with Russia. And that's why I keep coming back to what the current government's policy is. You've got to remember that...
So what's the principle here at stake?
So the principle is that we need to stand with our friends and allies. They need to go and look exactly what's happening here. No matter what. No.
Even if we don't have any evidence. I mean, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, to take them at their word in the House, which you have to, really, they say the information from the SIS says there's no one who fits that description in New Zealand. And if that's the evidence, then why would they just symbolically throw someone out just to throw a bone to our allies?
Well, it's not about throwing a bone to our allies, but again, you need to, the question is, when so many other countries are finding these people there, why is New Zealand unique when we're a Five Eyes nation? So what I'm saying to you is that I don't fully accept that the way that this has been put to us by the government, and they're not taking it seriously enough.
Do we spy overseas?
And I'm not aware that we do.
Come on.
I'm not aware that we do.
Yes, you are. You were the Trade Minister. We spied for Tim Grosser to get his WTO job. That was public. Do you remember those news stories?
So in the 2 years that I was Trade Minister, I'm not aware that we do.
Really?
That's right. Not aware that I do. That we do.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Todd McClay there, who is the Foreign Affairs and Trade spokesman for the National Party. It's 7:23. And
you're listening to Morning Report.